Is there not an entire section on this subject?
No, yes, I may have changed my mind in the meantime on that, so it's unfair. I may have changed my mind about Mithra, for example.
Is your book for sale back?
Yes, sir.
Let me tell you, let me tell you, let me tell you, let me tell you, let me tell you.
But have you ever asked God for forgiveness? I'm not sure I have. I just go and try and do a better job from there. I don't think so.
Let me tell you, let me tell you, let me tell you, let me tell you, let me.
Say it like you mean it. This is my Bible.
What up? I got something to say.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Let Me Tell You, episode 61. I am your host, the Evangelical Norm. So we're going to jump right into today. I'm going to have to really try hard to check my temper. I have to remember that my daughter is asleep right in the room above me, and I got to work on keeping my volume down to where I don't wake her up. So this is going to be a test in patience and self-control. So we'll see if those fruits of the Spirit move in me. Lord help me. Seriously, Lord help me. Because the main thing I'm going to talk about today has got me really, really irritated. So we're going to get to that. But first, I mean, we've got to address it. Another situation of a young black person killed for not that they're, I mean, I guess sometimes there is a reason for killing, for, you know, self-defense, stuff like that. Another young black person killed for no reason. And the majority of time, there is no reason. So this is Breonna Taylor, a young black woman. This, by no means do I think that her situation was racially motivated. This was a case of really, really, really bad police work. So, young black woman killed by police. But it doesn't fit the same narrative that we've seen in the past, where it's based off of fear or any of these other things. This was just really crappy police work. They essentially were, serving a no-knock warrant to apparently the wrong address. So they're at the wrong place, not pounding on the wrong door, kicking in the wrong door. Her boyfriend comes out, rightfully so, with a weapon, with a handgun, I believe, to defend his home, their home. Maybe it was hers. I'm not sure whose apartment it was. I don't think they were married. It was a boyfriend, so maybe they were living together. It was theirs. You know, again, well, judgments on marriage and so on aside, you know, he was protecting that home from what he assumed was a break-in, because these police are serving a no-knock warrant at the wrong place for a person that was already in police custody. So bad communication, bad GPS. I don't know. I mean, it boggles the mind why this happened the way that it happened. And unfortunately, the life of a young black woman is taken. And we end up back in the same place that we were just 2 weeks ago with the Ahmaud Arbery situation, which that one I still look at the facts of that and I go, that I'm still pretty convinced that that's racially motivated. That, and again, I don't like to play the what ifs, but because a black man was looking through a house under construction, white men took it upon themselves to hunt this man down when they should not have done so with weapons. There was no viable reason for a citizen's arrest, but and then we see another loss of life. So we're right back into the same hashtag narrative of I run with Maud, and hashtag Breonna Taylor, hashtag Philandro Castile, hashtag you name it. It's the hashtag, and here's what I want to kind of talk about tonight. Last night. I had the privilege of joining in again with Curt Kennedy and a lot of people from his church and some other people that joined in on the conversation on just a Zoom discussion, and the title of it was Dear God, Why Are Things Still So Hard Between Blacks and Whites? So we had done one a couple weeks ago on COVID-19, so it's really cool to be able to engage in these, and I really do. I appreciate Curt putting in the time and the research and so on. And so he played a clip, and the main thing we kind of talked about was, this cultural thing of and the pathology behind a lot of the racial tension is that it was put forth, and I mean it's been around for a long time, but ultimately in the film The Birth of a Nation, it was literally put forth that there is that black men or black people are prone to violence and criminality. And so we talked a lot about that, and still I mentioned last week in the episode I did about Ahmaud Arbery that Curt had tweeted out, I don't fit the description of a crime, I fit the description of your fear. And ultimately that's where this whole thing came from, and the narrative comes from, and the pathology that has been adopted. We and myself to a point, but not so much, because again I've grown up with a lot of black friends. And I never saw, I mean, the narrative was there. It's not like I didn't know that this was a common conception that black people were prone to violence and criminality and so on. I mean, in the music and the culture and so on. But I came from a place where I'm like, I know these people and I don't see it. I mean, it was not until I joined the Army, and I'm not one of those guys that never knew anybody who was black until I joined the Army. We had people, I knew guys, white guys, that had never met a black person until they joined the Army, and I found that amazing. And so, but my experience was, none of the black friends and black people that I had ever met had any of this propensity towards violence or criminality. None of them. I used to tease a couple of guys that I knew going through high school, guys that we would be driving down the street and they would have, it was in the late 80s, early 90s, so the days of boom, 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 right? You know what I'm talking about. And we'd be cruising, and they would have F the Police, NWA just blaring, right? And we're rolling and we're attituding and, windows down, arms out, the whole nine. And then they'd see a cop and turn it down real quick. And I'd clown them. I'm like, you ain't hard, right? I mean, if you're gonna play the song, you might as well play it for the cop that you're driving by. But they turn it down, and hands at 10 and 2, and so on. And maybe that came from fear of what happens when black men get pulled over by police. But for me and my knowledge of these guys was that was just their personality. None of these guys were really hard. I mean, we all acted hard, when we were out in public and around other people and stuff like that. But I mean, as soon as, the doors were closed and you're inside, you're playing Nintendo or whatever it was, or Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, the attitude was completely different. So I never believed that, even though I knew it was out there. My experience was not that. So But when it comes down to, I mean, first off, before I get into this next my thoughts on why we still have, and I didn't get to a point where I shared this. I shared a couple of things in the discussion with Curt, but we get to this place anytime any of these things come up. Of course, now Black Lives Matters is coming back up again, and so on, and the hashtags, and then of course what happens on the white side of the deal is we immediately go to, and this is going to move into, you'll catch the transition here, we immediately go to the all lives matter. Well, that's, again, it's not helpful. We talked a little bit about this. Nobody, when we see anti-Semitism or anything like that where Jews are being persecuted, no one is, and I mean, of course, we don't see the same Jewish Lives Matter or anything like that, but no one's telling the Jews to get over the Holocaust. No one's telling them or going, well, anti-Semitism it's just a figment of your imagination and things have gotten so much better. It's a recognition thing. But when this happens with blacks and Black Lives Matter comes up, automatically there's a pushback. And I think the reason why is, and here's ultimately why we still have issues in race and so on, is pride. We talked a little bit about it again. Total depravity, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and so on. But there's this attitude of pride. This narrative has been going on for years. I mean, if what Curt posited was, it kind of began with The Birth of a Nation, and that movie going out and being such a the state of the art, groundbreaking cinema for its time, and becoming such a huge thing. I mean, even up until the 1970s, this movie from 1915 was still being used to recruit people for the KKK. And so, whether or not it started there or that was just what catapulted the pathology into the American psyche, the problem is nobody wants to admit that they're wrong. Right? The pride is there that nobody wants to admit that they're wrong. So rather than doing what we should do as Christians, and that is recognize the pain. There is a community here, and I mean, the list goes on and on. I meant to go back and pull up one Facebook. Let me see if I can find it real quick as we do this. All right, here. Let me see if I can find this this post again. But again, the list of names and hashtags just goes on and on and on and on. And so the point is man, I wish I could find this. Sorry, this is great podcasting. I know I'm so good at this all the time. And again, I mean, this is something that I can't remember all the names. I mean, we know the names. We know. I can't find it. So. But hashtag Philandro Castile, hashtag Freddie Gray, hashtag, God, why can I not remember? See, herein lies the problem is our soundbite society that it happens in a week or two later, it's gone. Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin. I don't generally, include Mike Brown in the list. But Freddie Gray, wow. So again, the list goes on, and you know what I'm talking about. But we should be, this is a community that has, in the last 2 years, 3 years, has experienced so much of this very public, very unnecessary loss of life. And now, okay, and we can make the argument that, well, white people die all the time and da da da, and people want to throw out Chicago and black people killing black people. None of that is helpful, and none of that is the way that we as Christians should respond. We weep with those who mourn. Immediately, we should rather than going, like with Ahmaud Arbery, where everyone was, oh, well, what was he doing? What was he doing he was jogging. Now we get further information that he had been inside a home, but nothing that says he was there to steal or anything. He didn't take anything, nothing. But people just responded, well, what did he do? And it's, again, we find ourselves in these places. I look at an example of one time being in Acacia Park in Colorado Springs and seeing a homeless guy. And he was black. He had a bike and a guitar. And one person that was with me made the comment, and my assumption, and so there was a conversation that happened. A couple of people were there. One person says, wow, look at it. I don't know we got to the point of this guy has a guitar. How does a homeless person have a bike and a guitar or something like that? One of the people was like, well, he probably stole it. That was their first gut response. Mine was, my first gut response is those are his last remaining worldly possessions. And so, again, different attitudes, different upbringings, who knows what it is that causes that. But as Christians, we should not immediately go to, and I'm the guy that says, wait for all the facts. But the first fact that we know is that somebody died. Even in the Mike Brown case, and we can get into that. This is, it began the hands up, don't shoot, and the narrative came back that he actually attacked Officer Darren Wilson. They struggled for a weapon and so on. Could it have been the same situation as Ahmaud Arbery? I mean, he was running and he comes around the truck and there's a guy with a gun, and he went to, in fear for his life, the assumption that he went after the gun. I mean, he could have run on, but then give the guy his back and be shot in the back. But the Mike Brown narrative was, that wasn't a concern. That wasn't a threat at this point. He was just coming at the officer. So all that aside, the first thing that should have been done, and I love the fact that in Curt Kennedy's song Justice, he says it in there, have we forgotten that they just lost a son? Who cares about the rest of the information and the rest of the facts at this point? The one fact that we know is this person is dead. Tamir Rice was dead. Trayvon Martin was dead. Philandro Castile was dead. Ahmaud Arbery was dead. Mike Brown was dead. Breonna Taylor is dead. Our first response should be to weep with those who mourn, to mourn with those who mourn. Her family, that we see pictures of her, and I don't know if it's a husband or a boyfriend. Well, of course, and the story is it's a boyfriend. So, through the news, but we see pictures of her. So this boyfriend has lost his girlfriend, sister, brothers and sisters have lost their sibling, mothers have lost their daughter. Our first initial reaction should not be to go, well, let's immediately look to find the way to show that the police or the white people were not in the wrong, that there was some reason why this person probably should have died. And no, we stop and we say we mourn with those who mourn. We weep with those who weep. That should be and none of us is on, and unless you're actually somebody investigating the case. But for the majority of people on Facebook and so on that we see these things coming out, we're not the investigators. We're not. So let them do their job. Let them do their job, and then we'll see the facts come out later and so on, and we can deal with it then. Immediately, our concern should be the state of their soul. Was this girl saved? Was Ahmaud Arbery saved? Is his family? Are their families? How can we pray for them? How can we share the gospel with them? How can we get God's truth and God's comfort to them? That should be the concern of the Christian, white, black, or otherwise. But yet we find ourselves in these places where there's so much pride of, well, this is the narrative we've always known. They must have been up to something. And the pride that says, I don't want to admit that I was wrong about this narrative. I mean, I have the benefit of growing up with a lot of black friends who gave me, through their personality and through being able to observe their lives, that I knew that this narrative was BS. Now, are there some black people out there who are prone to violence and criminality? Well, just the same amount as there are white people and Hispanic and Asian and so on, because of total depravity, and all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Sin, violence, criminality is not a racial thing. It's a human condition thing. And some sin is more violent and more, criminal than others. Whereas some sin is just pornography or whatever it is that what you deal with. So we mourn with those who mourn. And I spent way more time talking about this than I had expected to, but obviously it's an important issue. And we need to figure out a way to get beyond it. We've got to get rid of the pride and be willing to go, I was wrong about this. Pray for Breonna's family. Pray for Ahmaud Arbery. Pray for Mike Brown's family. Pray for all these families who have lost. And rather than immediately, going political one way or the other, and, all lives matter. You know what? It's okay to understand that when a black person dies, that someone's going to come out and say Black Lives Matter, and that's not a problem for me. And then we can move on and share the gospel, which carries the fact that all lives matter. Does that make sense? So I hope that, hope that's helpful for you guys. Here's what I really want to talk about. And here's what's really got me irritated this week. Really, really irritated this week. This person here in this picture, jail deputy recovers from COVID-19. This is my cousin. And I've never met him. I've never had a conversation with him. He is a distant cousin of mine. David Bickley, I believe, is his name. If I go back and look, let me go back and look at my cousin's my other cousin's Facebook page, the one cousin that I do spend some time and conversations and so on with. Let me get the name right. Yeah, great, Norm. He's your cousin. You don't even know his name. Wow. I'm really doing good today. This is, okay, yeah, David Bickley. This is, so the post that was put out. This is my cousin, David. Had COVID-19, recovered, spent weeks in the hospital, still having a lot of issues coming out of this, and so on. Issues with walking and really just regaining a lifestyle. So yeah, COVID-19 has become, I guess, somewhat personal for me. Again, I don't know David. I don't know him. He's a distant cousin, and I think he may have tried to add me on Facebook at one time or another. I'm the guy on Facebook that I'm like, you know what? I don't need to be friends with everybody. If I don't know you, I'm not going to. But so no interaction has happened here. Do I care the fact that, yes, he's my cousin, he's blood, and I'm happy that he recovered and so on. What makes me angry is the sharing of this story, this news story and the link and so on, has been done as a guilt trip for those people like me who are saying we need to open up our economy again. And, you know, so the posts and the so on is like, well, here's a face to and a name to go with this thing. And so all you people who want to go get a haircut, you're just killing everybody. Right? And so, one, I'm like, I'm irritated because of the guilt trip that's being given. But two, now I'm looking and going, people are using my family, you know. Now, granted, I don't know David. I should know David, and hopefully the next time we have a family reunion, I'll get to meet him, and you know, we'll see. But to use, the people are literally using news stories about my family as a guilt trip to, you know, to beat up those of us who want to open up and just, you don't care about people and you just want people to die and da-da-da-da-da, and not recognizing the fact that I just don't want people to lose their livelihoods either. And so here was the post that really got to me. Also shared by a family member of mine. Anyone arguing that only 1% to 2% of the population dying isn't a big deal and is concerned about their freedom to get back to normal needs to identify 1 or 2 family members or close friends they are willing to offer up to death to save the economy or regain their freedom. Name them. Say them aloud with the same ease you offer up or dismiss someone else's friend or family member. Really? This post came first, and I tried multiple times to formulate a response to this, and I never could without just getting angry and irritated and just so frustrated at this, because this is nothing more than an emotional BS guilt trip that is woosah, right? It's just, this is virtue signaling at its finest. You know, first off, it's not 1% to 2% of the population dying. If we really break down, you know, in a year or a day or whatever, a good portion of our population dies daily, and then more are born. You know, I think for getting close to the first time ever, I would say that well, and I can't say that. I should just walk that back a little bit. In my opinion, I'm not a population scientist or anything like that, but with the amount of abortions that are done annually around the world and the deaths that happen around the world, I would say that it's likely, and I would have to look it up, and I'm sure somebody in the comments or something is going to tell me how wrong I am, that the birth rate is less than the rate of those that are dying. So we are not regenerating the population in the same way that we once did. And so there's always a huge amount of the population that dies. But this is you people who want to open restaurants back up and you want to go back to normal. You just don't love people and you just want people to die. You know, I had a friend of mine, the best man at my wedding, commented on a post that I had made that you're going to leave a trail of dead bodies in your wake. Well, newsflash, guys, I'm pretty sure I had this back in November, and I was at church. I went to work. I slept in a chair upstairs because the coughing fits that I would have at night would keep my wife awake if I tried to sleep in our bed. So I ended up sleeping in a chair upstairs for a week or two because this cold that I had, fever, chills, coughing fit, body aches, you name it, shortness of breath. I mean, it caused all kinds of the symptoms that go along with COVID. And I was at church, I was at work, I was doing everything. I passed communion. Nobody died. Nobody died. Because one, I wash my hands quite a bit. I use hand sanitizer. I'm not all up in people's faces or anything like that. So the just general common sense things that we do on a daily basis kept that from spreading to a lot of people and killing people. I mean, other people got sick. Other people that I know that, and maybe it was I gave it to them or whatever. My daughter, I'm sure, had this in February. So again, the narrative that one or two close family members are going to die because you want to go do that is BS. That is guilt trip, emotionalism, virtue signaling, pick your term. But this is garbage. Because the reality is, the true reality of it is we can do both. All the models that led to this kind of stuff were wrong. We were told before that 2 million Americans were going to die of this. We're closing in on 100,000 deaths. Is that tragic? Yes. Is that horribly higher than what our normal death rate would be? And the reality of the fact that a good percentage of those COVID-19 deaths are not COVID-19 deaths. Those people died from other things. They were just labeled COVID-19 because of whether it was convenience or, more money from the government or whatever it was. We literally have Debbie Burks up on video saying, well, yeah, we're calling anybody who we even suspect, whether they're tested or not, we're calling them COVID-19 deaths. There is a family in a church in Tooele, Utah, that had a loved one who had cancer, quit taking chemo because there really wasn't anything else they could do. So he had a $250,000 rider in his insurance policy for cancer. He died. They called it COVID-19. Insurance company doesn't want to pay out the $250,000 because, according to the death certificate, he died of COVID-19 and not cancer. Now they need lawyers and they have to do all this stuff because the numbers have been cooked. And I'm telling you right now, I'm not an expert or anything else, but I can look at reality and I can look at facts. I can look at news stories and I can add 1 and 2. 1 plus 1 equals 2. And people who die of underlying conditions just because they happen to have COVID-19 at the same time does not mean they died of COVID-19. So these numbers are high, these statistics, and all the models were wrong. I mean, we can look at Florida. I mean, this was supposed to be a pile of smoldering ash after the spring breakers were down there doing their thing, and the news stories we saw of, they just don't care, and they literally young people going, well, I don't care about COVID, I just want to come out here and have some Jello shots and look at some pretty girls and do my thing. Florida did not become the pile of smoldering ash that we were told they were going to be. Wisconsin, when you shouldn't be letting people go out and vote. They went to the voting places. So many people are going to die. It did not happen. That was a month ago. And we did not see the projected numbers and so on. Texas is reopened and they're going, there's all these new cases and all this stuff. Well, that's to be expected. This shutdown was never, it should not have happened the way that it did, I don't think. But it was not intended to cure the virus or to eradicate the virus. It was to flatten the curve. It was to keep from overloading the hospital systems. Well, we've got 1.4 million people in this country who were laid off from hospitals, medical workers, because all the elective surgeries were shut down. People were not going to the hospital for issues that were serious issues because they were afraid to be out in public. So people with heart issues and stuff like that were not even going to the ER for things because they were afraid they were going to get COVID-19 and die. because of the fear and this and the that, and then the people who are going, you just don't care, and name your 2 family members that you're willing to give up to death because you want to regain your freedom. No. How about you name the kids in your community that you're okay with starving because their family lost their restaurant or their mom and pop shop of whatever it was, and now they can't afford to pay their mortgage or feed their kids. I mean, 2 can play this game. I mean, my argument is just as ridiculous, but it's real. I mean, we're seeing, just a statistic came out that 40% of the 36 million unemployed people who have applied for unemployment are not going to get their jobs back. 40% of those jobs that were shut down are not coming back. So we went from 3% to 14% unemployment, and 40% of that jump are not going to go back to work, are now back going to be looking for jobs. I mean, that's horrible and should not have happened. Because again, in reality, both of these things can happen. We can restart the economy and we can have people going, and we can save the lives of those people who have are sensitive to this virus. And the reality is, it's biblical. The Bible talks about quarantine and stuff like that. Lepers were quarantined. Women on their menstrual cycle had to stay away for a period of time, and so on. So we see this example and this principle of quarantining. With health issues, it was the lepers were quarantined. Those who were sick, those who were prone to this, those should be the ones that are quarantined. You don't quarantine healthy people. You don't. You continue to go on with your lives, and then if you, and again, people get mad because I posted the thing. My frame on my Facebook page right now is, you can stay home, let me get back to my life. I never had to stop working. I've been essential. I have worked every single day. I tell you what, once this is all said and done, and our workforce at my work is back to 100%, I'm taking a week off. I am taking a week off, and I never take a whole week off. I am literally going to take 5 days in a row, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I am not going to work for an entire week, and then I'm going to have the 2 weekends on the bookends, and I'm going to have a long time to just not work. Because lots of other people got to stay home. I'm going to responsibly take my vacation time and not rely on the government to pay my money and so on and so forth. I will take my time off. But stuff like this, these arguments, this irritates me. Now, again, if I can have the conversation as adults, but when you start throwing this stuff up, when you start telling me I'm going to leave a trail of bodies in my wake, and that I have to identify 1 or 2 family members, I've had I've had one family member, and then I've had one friend that I just did their wedding last year who have spent time in the hospital. I've known another guy whose grandmother, I believe it was, passed away was attributed to COVID-19. She probably had underlying issues, and he admits that. But so I have not been unaffected by it, but that does not mean I have to lose my mind and lose my livelihood or make someone else lose their livelihood. And because I want to go out, and and it's not about, I just want a haircut. I kind of want to get back to my poker league. Full transparency. I would love to go hang out with some people and play cards. But it's not about that. It's about my friends who own businesses and them being able to keep and maintain their livelihood and a roof over their heads and food on their table. That's what it's about. But when you reduce it to back to normal and my freedoms and I just want a haircut or whatever, well, no, that's just virtue signaling, and that is BS emotional arguments that are are nothing but a guilt trip. And that really irritates me. I wonder if you could tell. So how do we deal with this? Again, we look at this and we come back to a consistent worldview. What do we do as Christians? How do we do this? We love our neighbor on all fronts. If you know somebody, grandma or grandpa who's in the nursing home, don't go visit them. Do what so many nursing homes, I've done pest control at a lot of nursing homes where there are signs and stuff. People have visited their grandparents through the window. You know, they've stood outside by the window and waved and said hi and you know, and had that. If that's your situation, then do that. Love your elderly relative or your relative that has underlying conditions, whether it be immunocompromised or respiratory issues or diabetes or whatever. Honor them, you know, maintain your distance, don't go visit, don't do whatever. But also allow for those who are young and healthy and who may get this and immediately recover. There's a 99% recovery rate. The majority, overwhelming majority of people are going to get this and recover, and then we have herd immunity. And then we have resistance and we won't see the spikes that are there. But we have to get people out. People have to get this, and we're not going to have a vaccine for it. Sorry, guys. I hate to burst your bubble, but they are not going to produce a vaccine anytime within the next 2 years. I can pretty much guarantee you that. So we need to get out because we can't stay locked down for 2 years. This country won't survive, and Americans won't put up with it. So again, as Christians, what do? We love our neighbors. We go, we support those who can work their jobs, and we do what we do, and we live our lives not in fear, but live our lives of loving our neighbor. We take care of those who are old or infirm, and we lovingly follow guidelines to keep them safe, but we let those people who are not going to be nearly as affected by this virus to live out their lives and continue on their making their livelihood and serving their coffee or giving their massages or cutting their hair or giving tattoos or whatever it is that they can do, what they do for a living, and allow them to do that. And then we preach the gospel at all times, and we use words because they're necessary. And until next week, Soli Deo Gloria.